Alright class, today we are going to be working with fractions. We have been working on adding and subtracting fractions, and over the past few days we've been working with multiplying and dividing fractions. So today we're going to do a quick little review, and I've got something that we're going to discuss at the end. Let's talk about our goals for today. Our goals for today are to review your common fraction terms, review multiplying fractions, review dividing fractions, and then we're going to talk about doubling, tripling, and halving your fractions. And then I'm going to introduce a project, and you are going to start on it today. So before we get started, in your quick write journals, I want you to see if you can think of a time that you had to use fractions outside of school. Briefly describe what you were doing and how you felt about using fractions in the real world. Okay, now that we've shared a few of the things that you have done with fractions, one of the things I like to do that involves a lot of fractions is cooking. Some of you have talked about cooking with your parents, and cooking is something that a lot of us do in our daily lives. We eat to live. And so that reminds me of this verse, and it's our verse for the week. Then God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. All right, they will be yours for food. This comes from Genesis 1:29. This is talking about when God gives us the fruit of the earth, and it is our food. This is what nourishes us, and it helps us to live full lives. And so every time that we should thank God for the blessings that come from that. And that might just be it towards your project. All right, so before we can get any further, we need to review some of our common terms. So up here we have a fraction, and this is 3/4, or 3/4, as you would know it. Over here I have 5 little questions that I would like for us to go through. Number 1 says, which number would be the numerator? Now we know that the numerator is the top number, correct? So, which number is the top number? All right, 3 is the numerator. Number 2 says, which number would be the denominator? Now, if we know the numerator is the top number, that means the denominator would be the bottom number. So, which is the bottom number? 4. Okay. So, now that we can identify our numerator and denominator, I want us to discuss these terms. Number 3, I want us to discuss what doubling means. Okay, when maybe you're cooking and your mom says, oh, we've got to double this recipe, or your dad says, well, we need to cook double the amount of hamburgers for the people. Doubling will mean making it twice the size. So if you had 2 hamburgers and you need to double it, 2 times 2 would be 4. Okay? Now let's talk about what tripling means. If you've ever heard of triplets or anything like that, you know that that means 3. So if you're having to triple something, you're going to multiply it times 3. So if you have 2 hamburgers again, but you need to triple the amount of hamburgers, you would do 2 times 3, and that would be 6. All right, but let's say we got to split this in half. All right, well, maybe you've got 4 hamburgers this time, but your dad or your mom says, hey, we only need half this amount for dinner tonight. Well, cutting something in half, like if you have to share half of a pizza, you know you don't get the full thing. So to cut something in half is to take away 2 or part of what you have, split it equally. All right. Sometimes we may not have just 2 to take away, so you're going to take away half. Well, in this case, we had 4 hamburgers. Taking away half of them would be taking away 2. So half of 4, you're left with 2. All right. So now that we've reviewed our common terms, I would love for us to do some practice. So on your pages in front of you, you have some problems, and I'm going to put those over here on the board. Number 1, we're going to do is a whole group, and then number 2, I'm going to expect you to do that one on your own. Number 1 in front of you is 3/4 times 2 2 over 3. Now, this week we've learned that adding and subtracting fractions have different rules from multiplying and dividing. When we multiply and divide a fraction, you're not going to change the denominators. Instead, you multiply straight across to get your new numerator and your new denominator. 3 times 2 would be 6. And then 4 times 3 would be 12. Now, what we know about fractions is that they have to be reduced to their simplest form. And so I can see automatically that 6 and 12 can be reduced because I know that 6 can go into 12. 6 goes into itself one time, and then 6 can go into 12 two times. So if I did 3/4 times 2/3, my final result would be 1/2. Okay, so number 2 on your paper, I want you to take what we did on number 1, think about what you've done for the week, and you're going to do the problem of 4 over 5 times 2 over 3. Okay, you've had some time to work on that now, so we're going to multiply straight across. Can somebody tell me what 4 times 2 is? Okay, so that would be 8. And then 5 times 3 would be 15. Okay, well, let's think about if this can be reduced down. All right, I think of the numbers that make 8. 2, 4, 8, and 1. Well, 2 can't make 15, 4 can't make 15, and 8 can't make 15. 1 can, but then you're still left with 8 over 15. So 8 over 15 would be in simplest form. Does anybody have any questions on how to multiply your fractions? Did everybody get the correct answer when we did 4/5 times 2/3? Very good. All right, now that we've reviewed multiplying fractions, let's do dividing fractions. Now, you've got some problems on your paper in front of you, but you're missing something that I have on the board. I have a question up here that says, what does KCF stand for? This is something that we've talked about all week, and so I want to review that before we start doing our problems. Now, can anybody remind us of what KCF stands for? That's right, it stands for keep, change, and flip. These are the 3 steps you should do when you're dividing a fraction. So like we did on the last one, the first one we're going to do is a whole group. Number 2, you're going to do by yourself. So number 1, the problem is 2 over 3 divided by 1 over 3. Okay, so to do this process, we need to do KCF, keep, change, flip. So the way I do this is I draw a K to start out with. I put a C under the next thing, and we put an F, correct? All right, now, 2 over 3, we keep. Somebody tell me what we changed division to. That's correct, we changed it to multiplication. So this is going to be 2 over 3 times. Now somebody tell me what 1/3 flipped would be. Correct, 3 over 1. Okay. So now that we've done our keep, change, flip, this should look pretty familiar to you. Now we are multiplying a fraction. All right, class, what is 2 times 3? That would be 6. And class, what is 3 times 1? That would be 3. Now, our fraction, as we can tell, is not in simplest form. Why do we know it's not in simplest form? Correct, because the numerator cannot be bigger than the denominator. So I gotta look and see how many times the denominator can go into the numerator. So I look at 3, how many times it can go into 6, and I know that 3 can go into 6 twice. So 2/3 divided by 1/3 would be 2. Okay. Now, number 2 is on your paper. So I would like for you to do that problem. The problem is 4 over 7 divided by 2 over 4. Okay, now that you've had enough time to do that, let's do our process together and check your answers. All right, so class, we write what here? Right, K, C, F. Keep. Change to what? Multiplication. Flip. 4 over 2. Does everybody have that? Very good. All right, so we multiply straight across. And 4 times 4 would be 16. 7 times 2 would be 14. Now, once again, our denominator cannot be bigger, or our numerator cannot be bigger than our denominator. So, we need to see how many times our denominator can go into our numerator. So 14 can go into 16 how many times, class? Correct, once. And how many would be left over? 2. And we keep our denominator the same, which would be 14. Now, we know that 2 can go into 14, so this is still not in simplest form. So, how many times can 2 go into itself? 1 time. And how many times can 2 go into 14? 7 times. So, 4 over 7 divided by 2 fourths would be 1 and 1/7. Is everybody good on your dividing fractions? Your review. Does everybody understand? Okay, great. All right, now let's move on to what it means to double, triple, or half. Up here and on the paper in front of you, you can see that doubling means 2 times 2, tripling means to times 3, and then halving means to divide by 2. So let's talk about a fraction that we want to double. Most commonly, if we're cooking, you're going to see the fraction 1/2. So if we have 1/2, we would take 1/2 and times it by 2. Now, there's a rule we learned this week. When we have whole numbers, we put all whole numbers over what? 1. So, we would take this, and we would do 1/2 times 2 over 1. And then we can multiply straight across like we know how. 1 times 2 is 2. And down here, 2 times 1 is 2. I recognize that both the numerator and the denominator are the same. And if they're both the same, what does that equal, class? Correct. That would equal 1. So 2 1/2 would make a whole, correct? Yes. Okay. So let's talk about tripling a fraction. Let's say another common fraction you would see is what? Can anybody think of one if they've ever helped their parents cook? 1/4, right? So we have 1 over 4. Now, tripling means to times it by what number? 3. Okay. All whole numbers go over what? 1. So you're going to do 1/4 times 3 over 1. 1 times 3 would be 3. 4 times 1 would be 4. Now, the reason I went ahead and put a box around that, because it's my final answer, is because we know 3 and 4, there's no other number that can go into those two besides what? 1. So it's 1/4 tripled would be 3/4. Everybody good on that one? Great. All right. Now let's talk about halving, or like we said, dividing by 2. Okay? Remember when I said if there's 2 people, but maybe 1 pizza, you have to split it in half and divide it by 2 sections. So let's think about it like that. Let's say we have 3/4 of a pizza. We don't even have a whole, we have 3/4 of one. And now I have to divide it by 2 people. Well, now we're back to dividing fractions. So we have to recall that skill we've learned, which is called KCF. So, what's something we've got to do before we can do that? Put this whole number over what? 1. Now we can write our KCF, which is K under the first fraction. You change the symbol and you flip the second fraction. So over here, this would become 3/4 times 1/2. And now this looks like your common multiplying fractions. So you can do 3 times 1, which is 3. And you can do 4 times 2, which would be 8. There is no other number that can make 3 and 8 besides 1. So your final answer would be 3/8. All right, is everybody good on doubling, tripling, and halving their fractions? Does everybody understand what those words mean? Great. All right, so let's talk project. All right, so if you were looking when you walked in the classroom, I gave you a couple of different sheets of paper and I told you not to look at the last one. All right, everybody pull out the last page. Okay, everybody should see at the top where it says recipe project. I've assigned a few of you a different recipe that you will use over the next few days. I have even typed on your recipe the word double, triple, or half. Here's what we're going to do with that. You're going to, first off, get out a separate sheet of paper, and you're going to find all the fractions that are in your recipe. You're going to be required to either double them, triple them, or half them, according to what's on your paper. After that, you're going to get to cook your actual recipe. While you're cooking, I want you to film yourself as if you were on the cooking show. And I want you to tell us what you're doing step by step. I want you to tell us, like, today I'm making cookies and I have to double my recipe. The recipe tells me to put in 1/2 cups of flour. So if I double that, I do 1/2 times 2, that's going to give me 1 whole cup of flour. I want some detail and I want to see you cook this recipe and have some fun with it, okay? You will be graded on your ability to complete your skill of doubling, tripling, or halving your fractions. And you will be graded on the quality of your video. Have some fun with it and work hard. I will be coming around to answer any questions you might have, and please let me know. Thank you.